Paul, I hit record. We're going right in.
All right, cool.
We understand, or you told me today, we have one of our friends who's now become a listener of the podcast, Mr. Jason. We won't tell his last name. We'll keep it as we always try to. But Jason is now a listener of the podcast.
Yeah, a shout out to Jason. When he hears this episode, he's going to have a real chuckle when he hears this.
Well, the thing that concerns me, though, is that here's someone, a close friend of ours we've known, 25 years now, that wasn't listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I think we might have guilted him into listening to our episodes here. It's a long time coming. We've talked about this for well over 2 years now, if not almost 3 years.
It's been May 2019 I started.
Yeah, and I thought I was late to the game in listening to your early episodes that you had done with Simon.
And all it took was a drive to Sudbury or Thunder Bay, and you rattled off 20 episodes.
Nothing like a 7-hour drive that allows you to bang off about 7 or 8 episodes in a row. That worked out really well. So I'm very glad that Jason is now one of among the ranks of our avid listeners.
Well, I don't know if he deserves a shout out after waiting for so long to listen, but we're glad to have you aboard, Jason.
Yeah.
Paul, it's been a while since we've actually sat down and done an episode, almost a month now. So apologies to the listeners who've been waiting for the weekly to bi-weekly episode distribution. We got some vacations out of the way. We had weirdly busy Septembers that have flown by, and here we are on what I believe is actually International Podcaster Day.
Really? I did not know that. You might just want to double check that. But yeah, to your point, it's incredible how fast a month goes by.
Yeah, it's today, International Podcast Day.
Wow, how about that? Well, then how
September
appropriate
30th.
it is. Did you know that coming into today when we had scheduled to meet today for recording?
I knew before I got here because I was looking at something. I have a couple Twitter people I follow that are podcaster creators or consultants, and I saw that it said it was International Podcast Day. So,
well, then
I did know.
It's very, very appropriate that we are recording on International Podcast Day.
I agree.
There you go.
Okay, we're gonna jump. No, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So you're right. September was a oddly busy month, but glad to be back recording our episodes. We're going to try to make this a little bit more of a regular thing, at least every other week. We try to do a recording and try not to have these gaps. So to our listeners, don't worry. This is we'll keep them coming.
Okay, so we got 3 things we're going to talk about today. Super fans, and how do I describe them? I guess super fans are those people that you will see at certain teams, sporting venues that are most of the time, or mostly every game, they might be dressed a certain way. They become recognized as a part of the team almost. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about nicknames, and this is one that I have been thinking about for quite a while now, is when you call somebody big guy or chief or champ or mate. Like, how do you feel about that if somebody calls you one of those things? And do you use that terminology with people? And then I want to talk about a men's health related issue, something that I was thinking about on the drive over here that has actually been bothering me for a while. And I maybe want to use this time together, Paul, as maybe to sit in the chair and have a chance to air some of my concerns. And then we're going to finish up with what we're watching, what we're listening to, or reading, or whatever it is. So why don't we jump into the superfans thing? The superfans, I didn't really set out to even consider calling it a superfan episode or segment, but what got me thinking about this was my wife and I went down to the Blue Jays home opener, which because of COVID took place a lot later than normally it would, because the Blue Jays were playing between 2-3 different venues in Florida, Buffalo, and finally in Toronto. And so they had a ceremony in July for the home opener. And they honored a few people. They honored some first responders and people that were associated with the medical field for COVID. And they also honored home plate lady. And for those of you that don't know who Home Plate Lady is, she sits directly behind home plate at the Rogers Centre where the Toronto Blue Jays play. So she attends many games, not all, but many. And she's someone who's been going to games now for at least 12, 13 years. And I just started thinking about this woman that she's probably in her 70s. She's been attending many games for 12 years, and I got to thinking about her, and then we talked about this, and you mentioned the Raptors super fan, and it just got me thinking about this whole topic of super fans in general, that, these people somehow become super fans. I don't know if they set out to be, but that's what I wanted to talk about today. You've done some research.
I have, yeah.
So let's talk about super fans.
Yeah, I think another way...
Is that the right word for them even?
Well, I was just going to say another word that you can maybe use to describe them would be notable or famous fans. When you bring up
like Jack Nicholson at
I was just going to say
Lakers
that,
games?
when you think about quote-unquote famous fans, and that's Clark cracking open another beer, so if he starts slurring his words, you'll know why. So yeah, when you think about, I think it's famous fans, you got Jack Nicholson at the Lakers games wearing his sunglasses. We got Spike Lee. I think he goes to the Knicks games. I think Rudy Giuliani used to be quite the presence at New York Yankee games.
Right.
And we're looking at it here from a Toronto perspective. I don't know if there's any super fans at the Leafs. There probably is. But
there were those people that dressed up in those sorts of green, like tight green spandex suits where they would...
Yeah.
I think they were in Toronto.
Yeah, it's a bit different for hockey because, hockey, the fans are certainly separated a little bit from the game because you're behind glass. With basketball, obviously courtside seats, fans are pretty much on display. We all know, any Raptors fans can obviously spot when Drake is at Raptors games.
Right.
And the reason why...
Yeah, Drake is a common fixture at Toronto Raptors games.
But yeah, the reason why you bring up the home plate lady, and to any Blue Jays fans out there, certainly I would think that they would probably know who we're talking about. Whenever you watch a Jays broadcast, her season tickets are literally right behind home plate. Mm-hmm. So you see her on TV every single night. So if she's at the game, you see her.
Yeah.
I should point out, she's not at every game.
No.
But she's there most of the time. She was there last night. I think the reason why she became famous and amongst Blue Jay fans is because I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. There was a foul ball, like a foul pitch that was hit back.
Right.
And it was hit back and it
into the screen.
Into the screen right behind home plate. So if you're sitting in those seats, it would be like having a 100-mile-an-hour fastball coming right at your head.
Right.
And this woman didn't even flinch.
That's right.
Most people, you could see them on TV, everyone's kind of flinching. She was like ice cold. And ever since that moment, it's like, who is this home plate lady?
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of research here, and there's a little bit of mystery surrounding her in that they have, I believe it was one of the sports news outlets tried to interview her, and she didn't want her name being known. She wants to remain completely anonymous.
I do understand she's a very private woman. Yeah. Because about 10 years ago, there was some talk of them trying to identify her, and she was apparently not interested. Yeah. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So it's interesting that they brought her out into the field for the game that she went to a couple months back, and they introduced her as the home plate lady, and nobody knows her name, and she doesn't want people to know her name. She doesn't want the notoriety. She doesn't want to be famous. And it's interesting. You'll be interested to know that a lot of fans have created fake Twitter accounts for her.
Fake Twitter accounts.
Yeah, it's strange. So if you go on Twitter, you will find home plate lady, but it's not actually her.
Huh. So if she does decide to do one, it'll be called the real home plate lady?
Yeah. So, gee, the real Donald Trump? Yeah, where have you heard that? So
do you know her name? Like, does your research get her name somewhere?
Well, I tried to do some research, but there is no mention of her name whatsoever. It does say that she's been a season ticket holder since at least around 2005.
Okay.
So, over 15 years.
Yeah, that's about right.
But yeah, you're right. She's just a very private woman. She's just someone that has probably the best seats in the house, and she's a fixture there at the Blue Jays games. But
well, okay. So the thing, and I know we'll get back to your research in a second, but the thing about this woman that I was thinking is, you're right. It seems she's a very private person, and I had to think she just was sitting at home one day, and clearly she must have some amount of wealth, because these tickets to sit behind home plate, I think, are somewhere in the $1,000 a ticket range, because she's literally, they're called the in the action seats, and I think they're around $1,000 per ticket.
I don't know if they're quite that much. At least
maybe it's $400
to $500.
Okay,
but yes, you're right. They would be very expensive seats to get.
So I imagine
literally the best seats in the house.
Right. So I imagine she said it to her husband, who she did go to the games with in the beginning, because I remember she would sit there with an older gentleman who looked like about her age, and after a couple of years, he disappeared, and sadly, I think that's because he passed away. But, what was I going to say? This is why I want to talk about that third topic, by the way.
No, about the investment for the season
so
tickets.
she probably turned to her husband and said, we're big Blue Jay fans. She might have even had tickets somewhere else in the stadium, and said, I want to sit behind home plate. Can we buy season tickets? And somehow she was able to get them, and suddenly started going to games, and away she went. And then flash forward 12, 15 years later, she's now this fixture, this person. And I asked, like you said, she's private, which we know. Like, is she pissed off? Like, shit, I just want to go see Blue Jay games, and now that I'm sitting on a field being honored by 40,000 people, like, leave me the fuck alone. I just want to watch Blue Jay games.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, like, do people come up to her and ask for autographs or ask for selfies?
I bet they do.
Yeah, they probably do. It's
especially
like, hey,
these days.
Yeah.
In this day and age.
Yeah.
I bet you there are people that ask her for her autograph. I would be willing to bet that's the case.
Yeah, at the very least, selfies for sure. It's like, hey, look who I met at the Jays game. The home plate lady.
So I've been to a few games where I see her come. She usually comes about an hour before the game starts, and they bring her in on a golf cart.
Okay.
From left field. They drive her in. The person who does like the concessions area, there's a dedicated concessions person that brings the food to the people in the seats. Yeah. They hug, they kiss, they embrace. Clearly, like, she's known and probably beloved in that section by the staff. So, anyway, what other research did you have on her that you wanted to share, or is there any more?
I don't think there is anything else on her. As I said, the information is very limited. Obviously, she's a very private person.
If home plate lady had a name, what do you think it would be?
Myrtle, Bev,
Gertrude.
Yeah, I can picture that.
Beverly,
yes. Let's go with Beverly.
Beverly, the home plate lady.
Beverly, the home plate lady. There we go. Well, while we're on the topics of superfans, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Raptors superfan, who is a man who is very well known to Raptors fans. And
yes.
Here's a guy who
not
does.
Drake.
Yeah, not Drake. Here's a guy who does like the attention. Gentleman by the name of Nav Bhatia. He has been a season ticket holder since the Raptors' inception, which was 1995, and he has never missed a game, and he has never shown up late or left early. Bet you didn't know that.
I didn't.
So he is truly the...
I didn't know he was a fan since 95 either.
Yeah. So I think he was a guy that bought season tickets near one of the end zones. So whenever the Raptors or another team makes a basket, he's typically on TV. You see him. And, he's a East Indian fellow and wearing a turban. So he kind of, I guess to a lot of fans, he kind of stuck out.
Does he wears like a Raptors jersey too?
Oh yeah, he always wears a Raptors jersey, and he's very animated. And he's one of those guys that
during the game?
Yes, he is, yeah. And he's one of those guys that just over the years, people have come to know him, and he's gained more and more notoriety to the point where he's a true celebrity at this point, which is quite remarkable.
Do we know when he became recognized? Like,
I think it was a gradual thing.
Because 95, I mean, I don't remember that guy being
25 full years.
Like, that is a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't think his real notoriety started more than maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, maybe a little
longer?
bit longer. Yeah,
okay.
But he's
But it didn't happen.
In this case, he owns a couple of car dealerships. So for him, he probably wants the notoriety because it likely helps his business.
Are they used car dealerships?
No, they're new cars. He owns a couple of Hyundai dealerships. So he is a very successful businessman. You know, to drive home the point of him being the ultimate super fan of the Raptors. As I said, he knows all of the players and coaches. He has personal relationships with a lot of the players. Yeah. You know, he's been to quite a few like weddings of some of the players, ex-players.
Okay, so here's this. I want to ask this question then. So he's a season ticket holder. 1995.
Yes, he's a season ticket holder that has somehow evolved into being he's almost an employee of the team
and a friend of
and a friend
players
of the players. So,
okay, so here's my question: if you have enough financial means and you put the time that's involved, i.e., going to every single game, could anyone become a super fan and become like friends with players on the team?
That's a great question.
Could you or I do this? Like if we had unlimited funds and could do what he does, he goes to the games, could we do this? Could other people do this?
I don't know. Wow, that's something to think about.
My questions tend to be very provocative.
Yeah. Yes, they do. Well, in the case of Nav Bhatia, he's a guy that really, as I said, he always has been very, very animated at the Raptors games. And he's one of those guys that he's at every game.
I want to get him on the show.
You see him on TV. He probably would want to come on the show. Good advertisement. But he's a guy that I think likes the spotlight. He wants to be out there.
All right. I've got to stop you. We've talked about 30-day challenges and we've fallen flat on our face with them many times. And there's a pin in that we need to come back to it. I want to issue a challenge, Paul. I want you to see if Nav Bhatia will come on the We Talked About This podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to issue you that challenge. Not necessarily I'll say to get him on would be amazing.
Yeah.
Do you think you could at least try to get him on the show?
You know what? Why not? That's a great challenge. Let's see. Why not? Because he'd be a guy that you could definitely easily get a hold of, by way of his dealerships. If you're to call up his place of business and sort of make a business case as to why you'd like to.
So what would we talk to him about? Just like about his super fanness?
Yeah, his experiences.
All right. Okay. So all the listeners out there, Paul is agreeing to get Nav Bhatia, do his best to get Nav Bhatia on the show.
Okay. All right. I'll take that challenge.
How long do you need?
Well, yeah, let's go 30 days.
30 days
30 days to hopefully make contact. And
I'm interested to hear this.
See if he responds back.
Next episode, I'm going to ask you what you've done, and you can explain.
Yeah.
Do you have already in your mind how you might go about doing it?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
All right.
But for those of you out there who don't know who we're talking about, the reason why we're making such a big deal about this guy is that, it is quite remarkable in the sense that the notoriety that he has obtained within Toronto. So to give you an idea, he's done many interviews. He's got an Instagram account in which he documents, every single time he's at a Raptors game. But he's also very active in the community.
He's a very charitable, isn't he?
Yeah, he has a Nav Bhatia Superfan Foundation, and it's from what I gather, the purpose is it buys tickets to give to underprivileged youth. So they have about $300,000 annually in tickets that they provide to youth groups.
How much?
$300,000 worth of tickets a year.
A year?
Yeah. So
just for Raptors games?
Yeah, just for Raptors games. So I don't know how many actual individual games or tickets that translates to, but $300,000 worth, that's quite a lot. So I would like to imagine there'd be quite a few kids that would be able to take part in that program.
That's really cool. So
that is cool, yeah.
The mission of this group is to get kids to see live professional basketball games.
Yeah, kids that...
Is it just like Raptors games?
I believe so, yeah. I could do a little bit more research on that, but yeah, he's such a huge fan of the game that he just
like
wants
that
to share that.
That's really cool.
Share that so that all kids across, all kids across Toronto, if they're in, disadvantaged kids, are able to participate and enjoy the game of basketball. It just, again, getting back to my point about his notoriety, he actually received a championship ring back in 2019 when the Raptors won the NBA championship.
Yeah. So again, like if you had the money, some charisma, could you get a championship ring?
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. All right, we got to get this guy on.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and the last point about him is that he was actually inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. They created a new superfan gallery, the Basketball Hall of Fame.
In where?
The Hall of Fame, which I believe is in Massachusetts.
So the U.S. Basketball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, the NBA Hall of Fame actually has a new superfan gallery. So that honors, I mentioned before about Spike Lee.
And he's getting in there? He's already
he was inducted. He was one of the inaugural members. So Nav Bhatia from the Raptors, Spike Lee from the New York Knicks, Penny Marshall, apparently she was a huge Clippers fan, Jack Nicholson with the Lakers. I'm sure most other teams have sort of a super fan that they can attach to. But
You're
yeah,
right. Springfield, Massachusetts.
Springfield, Massachusetts. That's it. I knew it was somewhere in Massachusetts. So yeah, he's a Hall of Fame member. How about
Should
that?
he be a Hall of Fame member? Like a basketball Hall of Fame member? Should there be a category called Super Fans of the Basketball Hall of Fame?
It's sorry to be
gallery.
He's not
an asshole about it, but
he's not a Hall of Fame member, but he has been recognized by the Basketball Hall of Fame within this sort of gallery because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like basketball fans tend to be, I guess, a little bit more notorious or more famous than maybe some other sports.
Mary Hart, baseball fan.
Yeah. So yeah, every sport.
No.
Yeah, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon at Red Sox fans.
Massachusetts or the Boston
But
Red Sox.
basketball is different because you see people at courtside seats. So they're on TV and it's a more intimate setting. So, it's great that professional sports are recognizing their super fans because these fans truly are the most loyal. They're spending the money.
Definitely spending the money.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for fans, there would be no professional sport. So I think it's a good call for a lot of professional leagues to start to recognize some of their super fans. So yeah, Nav Bhatia, he's a pretty interesting guy.
All right, so your 30-day challenge is to make contact with him and get a yes, hopefully a yes from him to come on the podcast.
I will make contact. Worst case scenario, he says no, he's not interested.
What do they say? The worst they can say is no.
Worst they can say is no. So we'll get back to you on that.
This episode is brought to you by Pace Painting. Pace Painting, serving all your painting needs, whether commercial or residential. Reach Pace Painting at paintwithpace@gmail.com or via their Facebook page, Pace Painting Inc. Or call Peter at 289-356-7744. Paint with Pace. Okay, Paul, you ready for nicknames? We're going to talk about nicknames.
I sure am there, sport.
All right, champ, we're going to get right into this thing.
All right, what do you say there, boss?
Hey, Chief, I'm ready to go.
Listen here, Slugger, don't use these terms on me.
All right. There's two components to this. Number one is these sort of, we're calling them nicknames because I don't think we have another name for them. These big guy, champ, sport. And then there's on the other side, there's nicknames that get used by certain cultures. For instance, mate. What others are there? What other cultures use? Mate's the one that jumps out at me. I'm actually at a loss. Again, topic number 3 is going to address this.
Yeah.
Are there others? There's got to be others.
Oh, nothing's coming to mind.
Homie? I don't know.
But man or
man. Okay, that's a good one. You're right. Man is very common in North America.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about, so there's two components to this. There's the the cultural nicknames like mate or hey man, or, and then there's these pet names, almost nicknames like big guy, sport, champ. Which one do we want to tackle first?
Well, I guess let's talk about the pet names.
Big guy,
names,
sport.
Yeah, names that you would use when. I guess where we're going with this is names that you would use exclusively for certain friends or family members.
Well, that's one direction to go, but it could also be when you're at a stranger might call you big guy. You go to get your breakfast sandwich at the local breakfast place, and the guy behind it hands it to you and says, "All right, big guy, here's your sandwich." There's that, and there's also people using it. So there's a few things to unpack here.
Well, and it's all a lot. Maybe depends on your persona. If you recall, many years ago, remember the guy who ran the French fry truck down at the Rogers Center? He used to
Juan Esposito, something.
Juan Esposito, or whatever his name was. Hey, ugly, or hey, good looking.
That's right.
But he was a guy that got away with it.
He would yell
his signature.
He parked outside the Rogers Center, or Skydome probably at the time.
Don Juan's.
That's it. Don Juan's chip truck. And he was just an animated, crazy character who, you're right, would yell at people on the street, like calling them ugly or whatever. And he was a hit. Like, people loved this guy. But anyway. Okay, so there's the Don Juan chip truck guy yelling out to people on the street, and I think most people are pretty cool with it. But tell me something. How do you feel when, let's say you were at a sandwich place and you went in there and you asked for, you ordered your breakfast sandwich, and the guy who's finished making it puts it up on the counter and says, "There you go, big guy." Does that bother you?
Honestly, no, it doesn't. Because you do encounter that every once in a while, where it's, you're at a restaurant or you're grabbing a sandwich and it says, "Here you go, boss," or, "Here you go, guy," or "Thanks, buddy."
There's a little part of me that...
I kind of like it. Yeah, let's put it this way. I don't not like it.
There's a little part of me that does think about it, though, for a sec, that says, and then I'm usually fine with it. But there's just this half second of, do I really want this guy calling me sport, big guy? Like, is he being condescending?
Well... Yeah, there's a lot of depends that goes in here. Is some of it could be just their personality, like an outgoing personality. I don't mind if somebody says, "Here you go, boss." I think it's kind of cool. But if someone is being condescending about it, like, "Here you go, tiny," or I don't know, it's there's a very fine line. I will admit. Most of the time, I think it's kind of cool, and I do like it.
Okay.
But yeah, I could see where there could be opportunities or scenarios where it does kind of cross the line, or where people could potentially be offended by it or take it the wrong way.
Well, what about now? And we've been talked to about this. Is certain things like when women get like, "Hey, good looking," or "Hey, beautiful." These are things that start venturing into territory of, So if you get called big guy, we might respond to it in a positive way. But if it's, "Hey, beautiful," "Hey, good looking," then they start getting into... so if we had a female here, we could ask her, "Hey, if someone said to you, 'Hey, good looking,' does that bother you?" It might depend who's saying it, which is a whole debate in itself. Like, if you're a really good looking man and you say it versus like an old creepy guy saying it, which is a bit of a double standard, I think. But anyway, we don't have female
Mm-hmm.
representation with us, unfortunately, at this moment. But okay, let's get it back on track. So we've got the big guy, champ, sport. We're okay generally with when people call us that.
I kind of like the nicknames because, again, you know me, I always like to do a little bit of research. So yeah, it's a sign of intimacy, trust, friendship. So in my case...
Sounds like you researched that and read that from a page, or did you just say it from your own...
well, that was from research, but I'm about to say that I think that certainly is the case. And I view it as kind of... I guess a term of endearment with friends or someone you have a good relationship with. No, in my case, a lot of people call me Polly. And as a kid, I hated that. I didn't like it.
Does your wife call you Polly?
No.
Didn't she?
No, I don't think so.
Doesn't Jason's wife call you Polly?
Yeah, sometimes.
Jason was the person we mentioned at the top of the show.
Yeah, the new listener that decided after 2.5 years to finally we talked about this a chance.
Who calls you Polly?
A lot of people do. A lot of guys from the softball team and just friends in general. And I like it now. Okay. Yeah, in your younger years, it's interesting how your opinions or your perceptions change. I kind of like it now. I like it when people call me Polly. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
I got a friend that calls me Big Guy, and I kind of like it. I'm okay with that. I got a friend of mine who calls everyone mate, and that's his thing. And he's Welsh, so we talked about how certain cultures like to use terminology. Mate, obviously, very popular in many parts of the world. But he's Welsh, and he says mate all the time.
So
and
do you have to be
cool.
Welsh or Australian or British to call someone mate?
I don't know.
Because I've heard non-British Australian
mate. I don't know if that's just your thing.
We have another listener who occasionally pops in to listen to our show named Dan, and he uses mate a lot.
Yeah.
And when I first started using mate, I thought, that's not right. That's you're stealing that from. It's not really. You're not allowed to use mate.
Is Dan going to be offended by the fact that you object to his using the mate?
No, I'm talking it out. Like I fully, when I speak on this show, 95% of the time, I hope I don't mind if the person hears it.
Yeah. I think it's okay if that's your thing. That
I'm warmer to it now than I used to be.
Yeah, like if you use it as a way in which you refer to your closest friends, mate or Mac or chief.
Would you ever use the word mate to refer to someone?
I wouldn't, just because I've never done it before, so it'd be weird to start calling people mate. They'd be like, they would kind of scratch their heads a bit. But
do you think it's more professional to use mate versus man? Like, hey man, hey mate, like.
Actually, yes, I do agree with that. Yeah, mate sounds better than man.
Because I use man a lot.
Hey, man. Depends on how casual you are. Like, certainly never in a business environment. But
really? If I use it in a business environment, I'll be like breaking all kinds of rules?
I think it's a bit too casual. But if you're drinking beers with your buddies at the bar, hey, man, look at that play. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so you're saying I can't use man in a work setting?
I would refrain from doing that.
Really? What's going to happen? Like people will...
I don't know. I just think it's too casual.
Huh.
Yeah, a little bit too casual.
Being the traditionalist that you are.
Yeah. But no, I love using those names as well. Like, amongst friends, I use champ, boss. Well, maybe not boss, but chief, champ.
I like man.
Yeah. All right, then you keep using man.
But you got me thinking, like, if I use it in the office, are people, like, offended?
Well... I don't know. Depends on how it's used. I would only use that if I was very comfortable with the person. If it's a relaxed setting, if you're going out with your coworkers, drinking some beers, it all depends on the setting.
Yeah, I'm going to explore this one a little bit because I may have caused serious irreparable harm in the office by the use of the word man. I'm a prolific user of the word man in the office, so God only knows what damage I've done.
I don't think it's career limiting, so I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it there, Squirt.
Oh, okay, Paul, I wanted to talk. On the drive over, I started thinking about this topic. It's men's health, and people ask about what this podcast is about. I'll talk about things that you deal with in everyday life, work, parenting, fatherhood, spouse, like relationships. I do say men's health is part of topics that we do address here. I don't remember the last time that we did address a men's health topic or anybody's health topic, but I wanted to talk today about a concern I have about myself. And that is a concern relating to my memory. I want to get it looked into. I want to go to a medical professional and find out if I have a memory problem.
Okay, that's a pretty bold statement. So, explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 3 or 4 now, when I was in Japan, I was experiencing times when I just couldn't remember things, like often very short-term memory type stuff, like or medium term, like something that was said in a meeting and then 2 days later I would bring it up and somebody would say, "Don't you remember this was brought up in the meeting?" And, at the first I was like, yeah, okay, you don't remember everything. But the longer I spent time with this, the more I started getting a little bit concerned that my memory, and I'm talking, it could be as short as in the conversation, like I could be hearing you say something and then I respond, and then I can't remember very specifically what you might have just said to me. So I want to get my memory checked out because I'm concerned about it.
So is it just a forgetfulness or absent-mindedness? Because it's interesting.
What are those things? Like,
like what
sounds like something old people have.
Yeah. It, I guess, depends on, we'd have to take a look at the exact definitions of these, but you're 49 years old. I'm not that many years behind you.
Yeah.
And, as people in our 40s, I will admit that my memory is probably not as, let's say, as sharp as it was, but I do know from time to time that sometimes you do forget some things. So for example, like, I don't know, like remembering who an actor was in a movie, or, the name of a celebrity is like, oh man, I'm drawing a blank. What's his name again? That guy. I'll admit that it occurs a little bit more frequently than it did, let's say, 5-10 years ago. I think there's no question that maybe our memories aren't as sharp as they were, let's say, when we're in our 20s or even our 30s. But obviously this is something that's troubling you quite a bit. And I guess the fact that you want to have it looked at must mean that, have you had instances where you were completely, lack of memory of certain events or things that went on, or, work-related or personal life?
Yeah, well, one of the things you notice with older people is when they get called out on their memory, they usually lash out and get angry. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't bother me about that. Of course I remember that. The difference between me and them is that I'm willing and able, like if somebody, like I said, it's been mentioned to me before, I'm actually fully prepared and ready to go get myself checked out.
Okay. And that's probably not a bad idea to do that anyway. Something that we should all probably do, because we want to have good mental health, especially leading into our older years. Not to indicate that you're getting older, but
well, I am getting. Everybody's getting older.
Well, yes, you are. What I mean is that you are quite spry for a 49-year-old guy. You keep yourself in great shape.
Well, thank you.
Yes, that's a compliment. So take it.
But there's a good point. There's physical health and there's mental health.
Absolutely, there is, for sure.
So, one thing I did do was I downloaded an app called Elevate, I think it is, and I subscribe to it. I pay a monthly fee. It's designed to work your brain, like math exercises, word exercises.
Yeah.
And I was doing it like religiously every day for a couple months, and I've since kind of put it down. But I did it because I felt like I needed to exercise my brain.
Yeah. And that's very true. You really do need to exercise your brain because, many people will say that if they've been off work or, women on maternity leave, sometimes their brain kind of goes to a little bit to mush sometimes if they haven't been, truly exercising their brain over a period of time. I know that there is, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is like supplements you can buy. So for example, like anytime I've been to Healthy Planet, I think there is supplements you can buy that that assist with brain activity or brain health. I suppose.
And the memory's escaping me now on the names, but there is a mushroom supplement that I was taking for a while. I forget the name of it, but it's from mushrooms, and no, it's not a hallucinogenic. But I was taking these mushrooms. I know it sounds weird, but and I think it was actually doing something for me. I can't remember the name of these damn things, but you're right. There are supplements for this. Like ginkgo biloba maybe and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, could be right.
But there is I'll look up the name of the mushrooms I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I do think, and this is another topic in of itself, but I do think that a lot of these sorts of things do relate to diet. Like if you eat healthy, I think your brain operates better. And obviously sleep is a big factor too.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, good diet, proper sleep, proper exercise, keeping yourself in good shape, making sure that, you're not obese or have other health issues that may relate to that. Stress, I'm sure, plays a huge role.
Well, the stress was the one I thought maybe when I was in Japan that was the reason I was having so many challenges. Bottom line is I want to go get checked out, and I don't know what they do, how they test memory. Are they like flashcards on a table, or what was that game where you would pick up a card and you'd see the hippo, you put the hippo down, you pick something up, it's a parrot, put the parrot down, and then you try to find the other hippo. Concentration. That's what it was called. Yeah,
concentration games, yeah.
So I do want to get checked out by a medical professional. I'm going to make this a theme. You're going to look up the superfan for the Raptors, and I'm going to go get checked out for my memory.
Okay. Yeah, keep us posted on that. I'd be very interested to know how that process works, what kind of tests that they run. I'm intrigued by that. Because I'm sure you're not the only one out there that has felt that their memory is not as sharp as it once was.
Yeah, I just want to find out, is it really something that the doctor will just say, hey, it's all normal. This is nothing unusual.
Something that's
give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack. You're fine.
Well, but and you don't want
I want that ruled out.
You don't want to be stressing about this, causing anxiety. There's enough of that already in everyday life.
All right, let's finish up with what we're watching, what we're listening to, what we're reading, whatever it is we're doing. I wanted to share two things. I wanted to share something I'm reading, and that is Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods. I don't know if you've ever read any Bill Bryson material before.
I have not, no.
He's a satirical writer, and he's got a few books. He's got one about his time that he spent living in England, and he writes a satirical book about that experience. He lived in Australia for a period of time, and he writes about his experiences. Notes from a Small Island, I think it's called, or maybe that's England. So he's got this book called A Walk in the Woods, and it's about his experience walking the Appalachian Trail with a friend of his. Okay. He did this, I think, in the 90s. And the Appalachian Trail, it's like a 2,000-mile trail in the United States, and it's excellent. I love satirical writing. He's got such a good sense of humor. He mixes the story between his experiences on the trail with like commentary about either environmental things like the species of plants that are going extinct or trees and why they're going extinct, to commentaries on America. Like, for example, I was just listening to today, I'm listening to it as an audiobook. He's talking about how America is becoming harder and harder for pedestrians to exist. To walk somewhere in the United States is becoming more difficult than it used to be. Like, the car is now the primary mode of transportation. So there's a lot of comments and satire and stuff he talks about American life, and I'm really enjoying this book. I think it's a good, easy read. I think it's 4 hours if you're listening to it as an Audible book, so it's an easy read. So, Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson.
So a walk in the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll check it out. I'm assuming you can get that at the library or
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I got it as an I have the Audible subscription, so I'm like 7 or 8 credits behind or ahead, whatever you want to call it, where I was just looking for stuff to download because otherwise you lose them after 9 credits. I don't think you can get more than 9 credits. What I'm watching, I just finished watching the Shumacher documentary on Netflix. So it's about Michael Schumacher, F1 racer, race car driver. He's. Do you know anything about Michael Schumacher?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
You know he's in a vegetative state.
Yeah, he had a bad
ski
crash.
accident.
No, yeah. It was a skiing accident.
Unrelated to his driving.
Yeah, which is weird. Being a race car driver, a dangerous profession of all things, he is immobilized by way of a skiing accident.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. I don't know if you've watched F1, the Drive to Survive series, which it was also on Netflix. That was a fantastic series that got me into F1. Now, I've never watched a race since I've watched the series, but I got really interested in the different racers and characters in the F1 industry. And so when I saw the Schumacher documentary come up, I was quite interested to find out more about that. And of course, his story about how he, did get injured in the ski accident. And he's been in this vegetative state, I think, for like 6-7 years now. I enjoyed it. My wife and I both watched it.
Was it sad though? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it is. It is. I when it finished, I turned to my wife and I said, well, how's that for a pick-me-upper?
Yeah.
But it's good. It's interesting just listening to the 3/4 of it are all about him and his drive and his competitiveness and how he was so dominant in the F1 space. And then, of course, the last quarter is about his current state. And it was depressing, but I enjoyed it. So don't let that turn you off. It was a good documentary overall.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I'll check it out for sure. Yeah, I always out for getting an idea for good documentaries, especially on Netflix. Okay, so what I am reading. So I'm reading a book called The Door. And to give you a context as to what this book is all about, several weeks ago, my wife, my son, and I, we did a tour of the Kingston Penitentiary. So this is a very old and historic maximum security prison located in Kingston, Ontario. And this is kind of Canada's version of Alcatraz in the sense that Kingston Penitentiary housed the most notorious of Canadian criminals, like Clifford Olsons, Paul Bernardos, people like that. Mm-hmm. Canadians would certainly be familiar with those people. So yes, the most notorious criminals in Canadian history have been housed at Kingston Penitentiary. And I guess about 5, 6, 7 years ago, they ended up closing the prison, because of it being very old. It was too expensive to maintain. So they closed the prison and have opened it up as a tourist attraction. So you can now take tours of this prison. And as I said, it's sort of like our version of Alcatraz. So the point being is that this book called The Door, this was a book written by one of the prison guards, one of the corrections officers who worked for many years in Kingston, many years obviously at Kingston Penitentiary and a few other prisons within the general area. I believe he worked for like 26 years. His name is Vern Thibodeau is the author. And I've only just started the book. Like I'm only a couple chapters in, but it's very fascinating. Just talking about, the prison system and how scary it is. You and I think about everyday stress, going to work. Yeah. In this case, you take for granted the danger of corrections officers. In some ways, it's more dangerous than police officers because you're in a work environment where people literally want to kill you. Like you are dealing with the worst people in the country, and truly evil people that want to inflict harm upon you. That beating up or injuring or even killing, a prison guard is almost like a badge of honor. It's something that they
especially if you're in there for life or whatever.
Well, yeah, people that have absolutely nothing to lose if you're in there for a life sentence. So yeah, as I said, I'm I'm very early goings in the book, and I might want to circle back to this because I think I know for sure this is going to be a very, very interesting topic. But yeah, it's just a real eye opener, and prisons have always been pretty interesting things. Like I love the Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite movies. I actually did the prison tour, the prison where Shawshank Redemption was filmed, which is actually in Ohio. It's the Ohio State Reformatory. Many years ago, we did a tour of that one as well, because again, that's an old prison that has been shut down and has been opened as a tourist attraction where you can take tours throughout there. Mm-hmm. I've been to Alcatraz in San Francisco.
Alcatraz is a great tour.
Yeah,
I've been twice.
That's
it's amazing.
A cool place to go if that's a must see for anyone that loves that kind of. That is interested in prisons or anything to do with that. And Alcatraz, that's always a cool place to check out.
I read a book about a prison guard. I'm just searching my Kindle thing right now for it. Oh, this is it. Life in Prison, 8 Hours at a Time, by a guy named Robert Riley. And I was fascinated by this book. So I can see why you would find this book about Kingston Penitentiary to be extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Just many of the things you just described about what he's writing about. It's I actually do want to put a shout out for another podcast called Ear Hustle, which is about life in San Quentin prison.
Okay. Yeah.
You might find that interesting. It's produced by an inmate from San Quentin in combination with somebody who's on the outside, like a civilian, and she helps put together the episodes, and they interview a lot of inmates, and it really gave me a different perspective on prison life and people in prison and all the assumptions and judgments we make about people in prison. And so I throw that out there. Ear Hustle, the podcast. I think they're in their 4th season now, maybe 5th season.
Okay.
So this is an extremely interesting topic, and I highly recommend Ear Hustle to get some more insights into what it's like to be a prisoner in prison.
And is this talking about current prison conditions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's current San Quentin now.
Yeah.
They talk to people on death row. They talk to people who are transgendered in prison.
Yeah.
They talk about what it's like to get a new roommate or cellmate, and the whole mystery of who's going to be your next cellmate. Like it's very interesting.
Well, that's the thing, that there is such a mystery about prisons, and I'm sure anyone who has ever done a prison tour, you walk away learning so much.
I've never done a modern prison tour.
Oh, okay. Well, Kingston Pen is pretty modern in the sense that up until about 5-6 years ago, it was still a functioning operational prison.
But did it have that old stone section, but then there was also a new part attached to it, or was it always just the old part?
It's still, all of the structures are fairly old. Like you can see why they had to shut it down, because it's a very, very old building. Like they film a lot of TV shows there.
Right.
So yeah, I think that between doing tours and using it as a film location, there's some of these old prisons have been quite successful in their post-prison life. But yeah, the fact that Kingston Penitentiary was still operational, within the last couple of years, you can still see a lot of the although it's old, there is certain aspects of it that are still modern or relevant.
Yeah.
And the thing that strikes you is how small the prison cells are. Man, just life inside a maximum security prison, that's scary. Like,
it's no life to have or want to have.
That is a weird life for sure.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and we've got a few takeaways from this episode. You're going to look into our friend, our Raptors super fan, and see if you can see whether you can reach out to him, make contact about coming on the show. And I'm going to look into the memory situation and make that my project to get my memory checked out, and I'll report back out on that the next time we chat. So,
all right, just make sure you don't forget about that. Sorry, bad joke. I had to say it.
All right, Paul, we're in your house this time. First time recording in your house.
Yeah.
It's getting colder out, so
you're right. As the fall approaches, it's getting a little bit colder outside. So
thank you for the beer.
Yeah, you can be guaranteed there'll always be beer served at the Provost household.
Today's episode was brought to you by Boreal Blonde Pale Ale, pure malt from, where's it from?
It's a Quebec beer.
Quebec beer.
Yeah.
And did you pick it up and bring it with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't buy this in the stores, can you?
I don't think you can get that.
There's weird laws in Ontario and Canada about buying beers from other provinces.
Yeah, it is a bit weird.
Good beer though, Boreal Blonde Pale Ale.
Yeah.
All right, till next time.
All right, sounds great.